In the Jungle with Jim Rome. Weekdays noon to 3 on WSKO Syracuse. A Cumulus media station. The voice of the Central New York sports fan. The Score. 1260. Welcome to your home for local sports in Syracuse. Outside the Box Score with Mark Rowlands starts right now.
You know, I had a dream last night, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
A dream that we finally made it big.
Me and you?
Me and you.
Doing what?
Doing this.
Oh, okay.
The show gets picked up by WFAN in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
So we grab our things, we get the ladies, they quit their jobs, and we move to the Big Apple. Our first day on the show, we've got a very special guest to welcome us to the city. It's Colin Jost, host of Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live.
Pretty big get.
Pretty big get. SNL is a comedy institution that you and I both love and appreciate, something that we grew up watching, something that we still consume in some way, shape, or form.
Some more than others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But something we still consume somehow on a regular basis. Colin invites us to the taping that weekend.
Okay.
Steve Martin is hosting. Foo Fighters are the musical guests. It's going to be a great show.
Wow.
We get there around 11, sit in our seats, and realize pretty quickly this is no normal Saturday night. All of our favorites are in the cast, just like they were when we watched them growing up. Adam Sandler does Opera Man on Update. Mike Myers and Dana Carvey take us into Wayne's World, and we spend the night in Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood with Chevy Chase, where he gets a delivery, or with Eddie Murphy, excuse me, where he gets a delivery from Chevy Chase dressed as a land shark.
The best of show.
Pretty much. But to cap it all off, the final sketch includes John Belushi, Gilda Radner, Phil Hartman, Chris Farley, and Norm Macdonald.
Okay.
We witnessed the greatest night in the history of television. The funniest people to ever grace Studio 8H put on the most entertaining Saturday night of our lives. And then I woke up.
Uh-huh.
I woke up and realized it was all just a dream. I didn't see all of my favorites on stage at once. We aren't famous and living in Manhattan.
No.
Instead, we come to the studio this morning and do the show just like we do every week, Saturdays at 11. Now, I say all this to say one thing, Josh.
Uh-huh.
Live from Syracuse, it's Saturday morning. It's Outside the Box Score live with Mark Rowlands, Josh Boheim, special guest Neil Adler. Now here's your host, Mark Rowlands. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Outside the Box Score. With me, Mark Rowlands, your home for local sports in Syracuse, right here on the Score 1260. We've got a great show for you today. Neil Adler joining us at 11:30 to talk some SU basketball. And I wanted to have Neil come on because, you know, I've got a few SU hoops people that I could get in contact with, but I wanted it to be Neil because Neil has an acute knowledge of 80s pop culture. And so something that's going to be a common theme on our show today, if in case you couldn't tell by the cold open and the intro that I made for the show, is Saturday Night Live. It was just the SNL 50th anniversary show on Sunday. This is actually kind of our anniversary show.
Sure.
2-year anniversary of the show was February 18th, just a few days ago. So, Josh, I know you watched the SNL 50 special.
All of it.
So did I. Josh and I have both been big SNL fans for a long time. I don't watch the show as much as I used to. I don't think you do either.
No, I'll try and watch pretty much every episode still.
Do you really?
Yeah, on replay most times.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's, you know, we do other things at 11:30.
Certain guests will get me to
get
in live.
Yeah, 100%. Like Shane Gillis is hosting their next show, which I believe is like March 8th or something.
March 1st. I'll
Oh,
be
March
watching
1st.
that on
Okay.
delay as well. Yeah.
So that one I will certainly be tuning into, but it's something that we're both just fans of comedy
Mhm.
in general, and it's it is sort of the pillar for television comedy. I mean, it's been on for 50 years,
Sure.
and some of the great comedy minds ever have come through Saturday Night Live, not just in the cast. I mean, we're going to talk, we've got list of our favorite cast members that we're going to share. We're going to talk about some sketches. So not only just the cast, but in the writing staff as well. I mean, the great
Sure.
Jim Downey, Robert Smigel, Conan O'Brien, Bob Odenkirk, who is like always, no one remembers that Bob Odenkirk wrote for SNL, but he did.
Mhm.
And there was one more that
Mulaney.
yeah, John Mulaney. Thank you. Al Franken and Tom Davis, Jack Handy. The list goes on and on of these great comedic minds to come through Saturday Night Live, and some, most of which went on to much bigger and better things afterwards. Conan had the show, and Mulaney is now one of the biggest stand-ups in the world. And so it's such a pillar of American comedy, especially on television, that
Mhm.
it's been quite important for us growing up.
Sure.
And I wanted to share some of that importance today. So we're going to talk about some Saturday Night Live. Of course, we'll talk about Syracuse sports. I'm wearing my Oswego hockey jersey today. Oswego hockey playing their last home game of the season today against Cortland. Makeup game that was supposed to be played on Valentine's Day, but because of the weather, they canceled it, or postponed it, I should say. Oswego basketball is having their alumni day today. Something I was hoping to be able to go to. Sadly, I'm unable. But so it's a big day in Oswego sports as well. So we'll talk about that later on in the show. Baseball is starting up. A lot of things to talk about, but I wanted to kick off the show by talking some SNL. So do you want to just get into the cast member list first, or do you want to talk some sketches first?
Hit me. Cast members.
All right. So Josh and I put together lists of our top 10 favorite cast members on SNL. How about we do, we'll both do 10 through 5. And then
I was going to say just back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say we can each go through 10 through 5 and then or 10 through 6 and then 5 to 1 we'll go back and forth and discuss more. So what's your 10 through 6?
Yeah, this is definitely a younger man's list here. I
Mhm.
apologize to those old folks who my favorite cast we talk about all the time is the 2010s.
Yeah,
That's just
It's a
your
great
cast.
cast.
So there's definitely going to be some bias there, but
Mhm.
in no particular order for these ones, really.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah,
don't.
I've got a few like towards the top of the list that I'm like, I think these are properly ranked, but the
Yeah.
bottom of the list is just in any order, really.
It's also like I had to pick ones. Essentially, like there's two that I have on here that are like pairs in my mind.
Okay.
That they kind of go together,
Mhm.
but I only picked the one that I like more. I
Fair.
like more.
Fair.
So, like for example, Tina Fey and Amy Poehler would go together. I have Tina Fey.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So that'd be one of them. I think Phil Hartman's hilarious.
One of the best. Yeah.
He's the best. Dan Aykroyd.
Yep.
Eddie Murphy would go down here again for me. Like just
Mhm.
things that like I watch back and they're hilarious, but like not my thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not my cast. And then another pairing, I picked Mike Myers. Mike Myers and Dana Carvey to me. I mean, I know they really only had Wayne's World together.
No, but they did a lot of
They were a
stuff
lot-
together. They were in a
go
lot
hand
of
in hand.
sketches together, and
Yeah.
interesting because I don't have either of them on my list. But if I were, I would have had Dana Carvey.
It was a tough one.
Yeah,
It was a tough one.
and they're both absolutely hilarious, and
Yeah.
obviously did many things other than that after. But you're both absolutely hysterical on the show. I've got Bill Murray,
Mhm.
Will Ferrell, who I assume will be higher on your list.
Yes.
Norm Macdonald, who in terms of pure humor is probably the funniest guy on this list for me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was pretty much just Weekend Update. He wasn't in too many sketches.
That's
like
fair.
other than that. So it's sort of versatility sort of plays into my list as well.
I was debating having Sandberg on here. I'm like, is that even fair? He did like 4 live sketches. All the rest were digital.
Yeah, Andy Samberg was all Lonely Island, but
yeah,
Lonely Island's incredible. So
right.
Maya Rudolph, who just kills me. I think she's so funny.
Mhm.
And just incredibly talented and versatile. And then I put Belushi in this area as well, because I love John Belushi. He was absolutely incredible, but it's like the people in front of I just think are kind of funnier.
Sure.
So who's your number 5?
Again, hard with the what should I say? The ranking
Mhm.
system. But 5 would probably go to the Belushi. That's
Yeah.
probably where he just peeks in front of the other ones to me.
Mhm.
That'd be mine.
Yeah, that's fair. Mine's another one from that era. Gilda Radner is so funny.
Oh yeah.
I had to have Gilda on my list. She such an impact on the show, and especially for being like the breakout female star from that original cast.
Mhm.
And we can talk about the original. I mean, every single person on the original cast was perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Chevy and Garrett Morris is so funny, and Jane Curtin and Aykroyd. The entire cast is so funny, but she was the breakout female star from that cast, and I had her at number 5. So
Totally.
4.
Kristen Wiig.
Okay.
I think it's like almost everything she's in is hilarious, iconic characters,
Yep.
versatile. Whether she's like the dumb lady or like even in the 50th where she's that freakazoid.
Yep.
Just very versatile target lady. All these things come
Yeah.
to mind.
Great at playing the
Fantastic.
weirdo.
Yes.
Very good at playing the weirdo.
And probably spawned a lot of quirky girls in high school you
Yep.
went with
Oh,
that
absolutely.
you hate, but that is Kristen Wiig. When
It-
done well, it's hilarious.
Yeah, and that Gilda was sort of the same thing
Mhm.
with Rosanna Dana and characters like that. She
Yeah.
was very good at that as well. Jim said Jane, you ignorant ... in the chat, which is one of the funniest things ever uttered on Saturday Night Live from Dan Aykroyd. I've got Bill Hader at 4.
Okay.
And I freaking love Bill Hader, man.
Can't say that.
The thing that kills me the most with him are always when he's like the sleazy game show host.
Yes.
He's
Yes.
so good at it.
And what's that name?
Yeah, what's that? We're gonna talk about what's that name, but he's just so funny as the sleaze bag
Uh-huh.
game show host. So, who's your number 3?
Farley. 3 is Farley.
He's also my number 3.
I mean, Down by the River, Chippendales, anything he's in is hilarious.
Yep.
The physical comedy is peak.
Yeah.
Peak physical comedy on the show for me.
during the
Fantastic.
50th when they showed that physical comedy reel,
Yes.
and it's just Farley falling all over the
Jumping through
place, and
walls.
jumping through walls, and he was just so damn funny.
Mhm.
Number 2.
That's where I put Bill Hader.
Okay.
For me. Same
Yeah.
same thing. Versatility on that one
Yep.
from game show host to impressions. Probably
Oh,
the best
the-
impressionist on the show. in my mind.
Absolutely, his impressions are so funny. His
Pacino.
Pacino is great. The one that I think gets me the most is his Alan Alda.
Yeah.
When they do like the casting calls,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, this is the original casting call for Jurassic Park, and he's Alan Alda. Clever girl. This script is really great, man. I mean, it's just great. It's just so complimentary. It's so funny. My number 2 is Eddie.
Okay. Yeah.
Eddie Murphy. I mean, Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood and Gumby and
Buckwheat.
Buckwheat and speaking of impressions, one of my favorite impressions in the history of the show is him doing Stevie Wonder.
Stevie. Yeah.
Yeah, he does an incredible Stevie Wonder, and I'm going to talk about it more when we get to sketches because there's one that sticks out for me in general. But I love Eddie Murphy. And who's your number 1?
It's Will Ferrell.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah. I mean, I what are we talking about?
He,
Celebrity Jeopardy host,
Yep.
Mr. Beck. I mean,
So funny.
countless sketches. You couldn't even. We could go the whole episode naming sketches that he's done.
Yeah.
That are just insane.
My number 1 you mentioned is Phil Hartman. It's so funny.
Oh yeah.
Reagan, the Sinatra group, which is a sketch I showed you before, is
Caveman lawyer.
Yeah, unfrozen caveman lawyer. Always played a great straight man too. Like he's the dad in Matt Foley. Like the
Yes.
first one, he's just now kids. Like always played a great straight man. So versatile. He like didn't do impressions, but he was like trying to, but it still just always sounded like Phil Hartman.
Yeah.
There's a great story I heard from The Simpsons that when he was doing Troy McClure, there was one episode where Troy McClure and Lionel Lutz Lionel Hutz, excuse me, were in the same episode.
Okay.
And they just kind of have the same voice because it's Phil Hartman. He puts on a little bit of like I'm Troy McClure, like a more old school actor vibe with McClure. But there's a scene where they're supposed to be talking to each other and it's just Phil Hartman talking to himself. And they're like, yeah, no, he doesn't do voices. It's just him.
Gotta do
He just can't do them. But Phil Hartman is always going to be my favorite cast member. And we made lists of sketches.
Yeah.
Like I have 5 and you have 5, but there are so many more we could talk about. So what do you? We'll go back and forth here. Like my number 5 is what's that name?
What's that name?
There's 2 of them that with one's with Paul Rudd,
Mhm.
and the doorman walks out. Kenan Thompson's. What's that name? It doesn't get it, and like he's like, "Yo, yeah, it's Norman the doorman." He's like, "Oh, okay, of course, Norman," and they they do a couple more, and then he comes back out, and he's like, "What's that name?" He's like, "We just talked about it."
They did the same thing. I mean, it's obviously
Yeah.
a bit of the sketch, but they did it like recently during election season when they had Tim Kaine come on and do it.
Yeah,
And they were like,
yeah.
Senator of Virginia. Who is it? What's that name? And then he came back again. And he goes, "We just met him."
Yeah, it's so funny. And then the other one is with John Mulaney.
Okay.
The
Yep.
John Mulaney one where it's like it's a bunch of his summer interns, and they're like, "What's that name?" And he goes, "Josh." Yes, there are 3 Joshes. Like, can you name? Like, can you pick one of them out? No, and you don't get the money. It's so funny.
It's like, I will give you $1 million.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It starts out it was like $5, and it's for $100,000.
What's that?
What's that name?
That's a great sketch. Mine's up there with I think Church Lady for me in that 2010s. Even when Dana would come back
Yep.
and do it, hilarious stuff.
Church Lady's always
Love the
funny.
Church Lady.
Yep, always funny. I've got the Eddie Murphy one I wanted to bring up. So he's doing Stevie Wonder, and Joe Piscopo is doing Frank Sinatra, and they're gonna do a duet of Ebony and Ivory, the Stevie Wonder Paul McCartney song, and it's just so funny, and it's more so for Piscopo. Joe Piscopo, incredibly underrated cast member, and so he's doing Sinatra, and they're doing this version of Ebony and Ivory, which of course is a song about racial tensions and all this stuff. But the lyrics Sinatra is singing are so different. It's like, "You are black, I am white. Who cares?" Like it's just so funny.
Mine we talked about, but Van Down by the River.
Yep.
I mean, that's just.
I'll just say Matt Foley's my number 1.
Yeah.
The original Matt Foley is.
I mean, what a great.
Unbelievable.
It always bummed me out because that'd be a great Halloween costume, but I'm just not fat enough.
No,
I'm fat.
you're not.
I'm the worst type of fat. I'm a little fat, but I'm not so fat that it's funny.
Yeah.
And that's what kills me, because I'd love to be Matt Foley, and I know Pat's thinking you can still do it, Josh, and I get it.
He just showed up in chat too.
I probably could pull it off, but it wouldn't hit the same.
Yeah, he said you do need to get fatter.
Yeah. I'm trying.
Another one, funnily enough, both of these involve Frank Sinatra. Is I mentioned the Sinatra Group with Phil Hartman. Is Sinead O'Connor and Sting, who was the musical guest that week, or the host and musical guest that week, as Billy Idol, which is a hilarious impression. If you haven't seen it, look it up. But there's this part where they're just making fun of Sinead O'Connor for being bald. It's Jan Hooks playing her. It's so funny.
One of the recurring ones too that I got, but specifically the first one I think they did, the Debbie Downer at Disneyland.
Yep.
They talked Fallon breaking with Horatio. Horatio, another one that's underrated.
Yeah, Horatio was very good.
So funny in that sketch.
Debbie Downer kills me. I said that during the 50th when they brought Debbie Downer back. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, she's drinking her Boost milk or whatever, the old thing.
The Ensure.
Yeah, toast.
So good. I've got Celebrity Jeopardy.
Yep,
as well.
That's my next one.
Specifically the one with Norm as Burt Reynolds, the Turd Ferguson one.
Who is Andre the Giant? What? And he buzzes back in and goes, I got it. He was a giant named Andre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. It's that's not my name. Burt Reynolds. That's not my name. Turd Ferguson. There we go. So
got that
good.
Massive hat.
Yeah.
Where do you find the hat? I've been looking for that hat for years.
I want the hat. It's such a funny hat.
So that was my 2 too. I'll just get this one out. I think my favorite one, I previewed it to you before the show.
Mm-hmm.
What's Up With That?
Oh, yeah. What's Up With That is great.
What's Up With That is my favorite sketch of all time. Jason Sudeikis just running man, never says a word.
Nope.
His weird, like, late 90s dancing hilarious
in the
running man.
tracksuit.
Yes, awesome. All the weird things. Nassim Pedrad
Yep.
in the one of them with the weird. Like, it's just all zany crap. It
Bill
makes no sense.
Bill Hader playing Lindsey Buckingham, who's they never have time for.
Yeah,
It's
and
like, Lindsey,
Lindsey.
you're coming back next week, Lindsey. We're gonna get to you next week.
When he's cutting off Sam Jackson.
Yeah.
Nah, Sam, you can't say that. Mm-mm. And just every iterate, like literally, you could just be like, well, the other morning, you go, the other morning I was here, and just start getting into
Yeah.
something. What's up with that? I love it. That's my favorite.
It's
sketch
so
of all time.
good. The real number one for me, which I don't think counts because it's an update segment, but it's just Norm doing OJ jokes on update for years
Yeah,
and getting fired because of it.
the compilations are hilarious.
Oh yeah, and they're
You
like
could
an
watch-
hour and a half long.
Yeah, you could watch literal hours of him just saying OJ
Yeah,
jokes.
OJ didn't help his case when he blurted out, hey, be careful with that. That's my lucky stabbing hat. Like, it's him and Jim Downey writing those OJ jokes so funny. Chippendales, another Jim Downey one, the Change Bank fake commercials, where it's a bank that specializes in making change, and it's just Jim Downey over explaining is, if you bring us a $5 bill, we can give you 4 ones and 4 quarters, or 3 ones and a $2 bill, if that's what you want. Do you want it all in quarters? We can do that. It's so funny. First citywide change bank. One I'm surprised neither of us mentioned.
Which one?
More cowbell.
Yeah, it was on there, but it's almost too. It's too big.
I agree.
The cowbell's too big.
James Brown's Celebrity Hot Tub, Unfrozen Caveman Lawyer, the Barry Gibb talk show.
Yes,
I feel like is always good with
Fallon
and Timberlake. MacGruber.
Oh yeah,
so good that and we were talking about Will Forte earlier. So funny.
One of the
such a great character.
Later SNL movies, like one of the SNL sketches that got a movie,
and a pretty solid movie too. They also brought MacGruber back.
Yeah,
it was like a revival season or something on Peacock. They did.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But just so, and one that I mentioned before the show that I alluded to that I thought would be on your list, the Dysfunctional Family Dinner with Will Ferrell, the I Drive a Dodge Stratus.
What?
Have you seen that? It's a one-off sketch.
I might not have.
And it's just they're sitting at a table and like an argument breaks out. And I drive a Dodge Stratus and I can do 50 push-ups in 20 minutes.
He's just doing Ron Burgundy, an early Ron Burgundy.
Kind of. Yeah. It's so funny. It's just a one-off sketch. I don't even know if it's called Dysfunctional Family Dinner. That's just what I called it.
Yeah.
But look up Will Ferrell, I Drive a Dodge Stratus. It's hilarious.
I'm gonna watch it break.
It's so funny. And one that I want to mention that was played during the SNL 50th as a short film is the Don't Look Back in Anger with John Belushi as the last surviving member of the original cast.
Yeah.
It's not even so much funny.
No.
It's just like, wow. And he starts dancing on their graves and like it is. I mean, it is kind of funny when like he's explaining how they all died. And,
right.
One of them, it's like I think he said Chevy died of like a cocaine overdose or something like that. But that is one of my favorites, just because it's like, wow, this is kind of funny, but also just haunting. That of course, it's Belushi, and the first person he mentions, like the grave, is Gilda Radner, and it's like, oh man, of course, the two that aren't with us anymore from the original cast, which kind of amazing that they're the only two from the original cast that have died.
Yeah.
But of course, it's the two from the original cast that aren't with us anymore that get the play at the start of the sketch. Just really, really interesting. It's a Schiller's Real short film they did in 1978. So one of my favorites. Any other sketches that come to mind for you?
No, I mean, I think we hit the big ones there for sure.
The Californians, one we were talking about before the show. So funny. And Word Association with Richard Pryor and Chevy Chase, which
just dudes shouting slurs back at each other,
which you just couldn't do on TV back then.
Which they did at the SNL thing. It was weird, but also kind of hilarious that they showed like they blamed the audience. It was kind of like the South Park thing that they did a couple years ago, where they showed Token, and they were like, his name was Tolkien. You guys thought he was Token. It was kind of like that, but they were like, you laughed. It was funny. they're still kind of funny.
Yeah.
And I loved it. The one that I need to go back and watch is when they have a triathlon.
Is it the throw like a girl?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was run, punt. It was like the pass, punt, and kick or whatever as
Yeah.
a girl. And it's like, guys.
It's so funny, dude.
I need to watch that sketch.
It's so funny. It reminds me of a Monty Python sketch, actually. I forget what it's called. The something twit of the year, where it's like an Olympics for just idiots. It's a very funny Monty Python sketch, and I wish I could remember the first part of it, but it's the something twit of the year, and it's like you have to wake your neighbor by slamming your car door, and so it's just people slamming car doors hoping to wake the neighbor and stuff like that. It's very funny. But yeah, that's our SNL discussion for the day. We do have to take a timeout. We're going to come back. Neil Adler is going to join us, talk some SU basketball from inside the Loud House. And I also want to ask him a couple things about SNL with his 80s pop culture knowledge. So we're going to take a timeout. We'll be back in just a few minutes here on Outside the Box Score, your home for local sports in Syracuse on the Score 1260. For the best local beer in Central New York, the only place you need to look is Myers Creek Brewing Company, with 16 different beers on tap at both the Inner Harbor in Syracuse and the Palace that is the Cazenovia location. Myers Creek has something for everyone. Want a bite to eat? Both locations feature a kitchen with delicious pizzas, some of the best wings in Syracuse, and much more. Make sure to check out our friends at Myers Creek Brewing Company, the official bar of Outside the Box Score.
Cashback is not available on gas in New Jersey and Wisconsin.
$5,000. That's the average amount of money people in the U.S. are now spending on gas in a year. $5,000. That's crazy. If you drive, you have to download Upside, the free app that gives you cash back.
Josh is currently watching the Dodge Stratus skit. I've got a couple minutes before I have to call Neil. So. This is great radio, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I'm just watching this sketch, guys. Who is the daughter?
I don't remember.
Can't tell. It's supposed to be the host that week.
Oh, is that Sarah Michelle Gellar?
That could be.
Yeah.
I like that.
I drive a Dodge Stratus.
What is a Dodge Stratus?
It was a really crappy car from the 90s. I wish you were dead. That was a Dodge Stratus. Just a really crappy sedan.
He's saying it with the gusto of like, I drive an S series.
Yeah.
Phone line's open? Oh,
I gotta call Neil.
I was like, well, we got a guy? It's Neil. All right, folks.
Not much.
Pat, I can't get fatter. I'm starting a weight loss competition. Starting tomorrow.
Hey, Neil, it's Mark. How you doing today? Good. I'll throw you on hold and we'll bring you on after the break. All right?
I'm going to go full sicko mode, Pat. I'm going to go the opposite way. And then immediately after said weight loss competition is over in July, I'm going to put on as much weight as possible.
Wait, you're doing a weight loss competition?
I sure am, Fatty. Austin and Burb have decided to want to lose some weight. So I was like,
Oh, yeah, Austin really needs to lose
get
a
me in
couple
on
of
this.
pounds.
Yeah, they're both like 200, 205 pounds. And they're like, oh, I want to lose weight. I'm like,
Austin's that heavy? I would have said Austin's $170.
he's got a little belly on him nowadays.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
But I was like, okay, fine, let's do it. And I just got to get it's percentage based, obviously.
Mhm.
Like, if it was not, I'd have a strong advantage. I still do, probably. But we're gonna put some cash on the line, so it'll inspire me. Hopefully, I think I can do this.
I think you can do this.
I think I can do it pretty well.
Yeah.
But then I'm very looking forward to, like, everyone that I tell this to. I'm like, well, afterwards, I'm just immediately gonna put it all on. They're like, no, 4 months, like, you're gonna be like, you're not gonna watch it. I'm like, no, I'm strictly doing this for the money, and then I am going to get fat as hell.
Yeah.
And they're like, why? You're gonna be healthy, and I'm like, I don't care. I literally don't. I'm 27. I got plenty of time to be skinny when I'm like 50.
Yeah.
I'll just be fat for the next 10 years. That'd be fun as
Why
hell.
not?
Being skinny's over. I'll never be skinny. Skinny's stupid.
Yeah.
I'm too tall to be skinny. 6'3" and skinny's weird.
Yeah.
I need a build.
You built like rookie Kevin Durant.
Like low key, like a 6'3", like a 240 build would be fine for me. If I get down to 240, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
Be toy.
Yeah, that'd be a good weight for you.
So yeah, 290 might be a little big. But 240's hot.
Jim says fat's where it's at.
Bang. Bang.
Bang.
I drive a Nissan Altima.
Nissan Altima's nicer than a Dodge Stratus.
True.
I drive a rental.
I drive a rented Jeep Compass.
And we're back outside the box score with me, Mark Rowlands, your home for local sports in Syracuse, right here on the Score 1260. Joining us now via the phones, the one, the only Neil Adler, editor at Inside the Loud House for Syracuse, all Syracuse sports, but right now Syracuse basketball. Neil, how are we doing today?
Well, you're super kind. The one, the only. I guess I'll take that. I'm doing well, Mark. How are you? Congrats on your anniversary. 4 years?
Yeah, 2 years doing this show. Yeah, it's been great. I've been with the station now for 5, I want to say.
You did say 4 online earlier, Mark.
Did I really?
Tweet. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Whoop.
You threw me through for a loop there, but that's okay. Hey, listen, happy anniversary, regardless of whether it's 2, 4, 5. It's awesome. Congrats to you, brother.
Thank you very much. I did not realize that I put 4 years. Now I feel like an idiot. I don't even know how long I've been doing my own show.
You haven't had enough coffee yet today. It's cool.
So, Neil, I wanted to bring you on and talk the dismal state of Syracuse basketball right now. We talk about it on the show every week. It's just growing more and more frustrating, really, to be a Syracuse fan. You've been watching this team a long time. What are your thoughts in terms of direction of the program, and is it frustration or is it apathy? Because I think I'm seeing a lot of apathy towards this program, and I think that's dangerous. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and definitely, certainly the temperature, the pulse, it does seem for some fans to be kind of settling more into apathy versus anger, frustration, disappointment, however you want to characterize it. I'll tell you, Mark, I've been a huge college basketball fan since the 80s. I'm old. I've been a Syracuse fan since the 80s. I went to school there in the late 90s, been covering the team for Inside the Loud House for about 10 years now. And certainly there have been some highs and a fair amount of lows over the last handful of years. This is the low point, at least as far as like I can tell, just based on interacting with a lot of fans on social media and in chat rooms and hearing their comments around the games and stuff. And last year was, I thought, a pretty solid year for Adrian Autry and his debut campaign. I mean, it's not easy to, even though Boeheim had a couple of rough years towards the end. I mean, he had one losing season in 47 years. So, replacing him and with college basketball or college sports the way they are these days with NIL and the portal and obviously revenue sharing coming up. The landscape is so much different, and focus more on portal recruiting versus high school recruiting. So as context, I think Autry did a good job last year, and I thought this year might be a bit of a struggle. They lost a ton of players to the portal. A lot of those guys were sophomores, and they were Boeheim recruits, quote unquote. But bringing in 7 new guys, 4 transfers, as well as the 2 freshmen from the U.S. and then Peter from overseas. That's an overhauled roster, and a lot of other teams have to deal with that too. So I'm not making excuses. And then for more context, Donnie Freeman only plays 14 games. JJ Starling is out for 7.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows how long? What the deal is with Chopper Moore. Again, none of this is excuses. It's just they've had to deal with stuff. But the biggest frustration for me, and I'm not apathetic because I bleed orange. You know me. I love my alma mater, and I'll root for them. But I'll also tell like I see it. Even if I'm generally positive person, there just doesn't seem to be. I'm not saying these guys aren't super close off the court and are buddy. It just doesn't seem like they flow real great together on the court. Maybe I'm mischaracterizing. I think what I'm trying to like. It just I don't know. The defense obviously has been a struggle all year long by and large.
Yep.
They've shown certainly in plenty of games that they can score points, but it's like they can't put it all together for 2 halves, and they've been in a lot of games, and it just kind of it unraveled at one point or another. Obviously, a handful of games like against Tennessee, Maryland, and a few others, Clemson, they got blown out. But they've been there in a lot of these games, so it's just not all fitting together. I feel like, and one thing, and again, I'm not a college basketball head coach, so I don't want to sit here and play armchair coach or backseat driver. But it just seems like this late in the season, Autry is messing around with the rotations. It's just so much, what I'm saying? Like there's no consistency, and maybe that's not his fault per se. It just, you would think they played 27, they have 4 regular season games left, and it's like, even with injuries and other things, like it's still like who's the starters and who's playing.
Yep.
It's kind of all over the place. And like a guy like Chris Bell, I think him coming off the bench, maybe he doesn't love it, like just generally speaking, but he's played pretty well lately.
Yeah.
He's shooting the ball, but just guys are and Eddie has certainly put together a lot of monster games. But to get back to your original question, it's there's definitely apathy. There's definitely a contingent of the fan base that absolutely wants to see a new head coach and just a new coaching staff. I'm still, and I, talk about this with your buddies, on Wednesday mornings. I'm still of the mindset that, if you decided to go with Autry and stand inside the Boeheim family tree, you got to give them a 3rd year. Not just because of their recruiting class coming in, because I still don't think that Sadiq and Cayenne and those guys, while they're good, they look good on paper. I don't think they're going to necessarily lead this team to the Final Four. You need to see who else comes back, as well as what they do. They need to do a better job in the portal, and even Coach Griffin, kind of touched on that recently. Yep. I just feel like the fact that he had a solid first year, this year has been a disaster. But letting him go after 2 years, I mean, you're not really giving him. I think if next year, if JG Starling is back and Donnie Freeman's back with the class coming in, and if they have some good, portal wins and recruiting wise, if they still have a really lousy year, then I think you really got to, look hard at where the direction of the program is. But it's not great right now. But, again, I think part of it is let's be honest, Syracuse has been on kind of a downward trajectory since the 2nd year of joining the ACC. I mean, that first year they started 25-0. They had a bummer loss in the 2nd round of the tournament to Dayton, but they ended up 28-6. It was still a really good year. But since then, they've had a few deep runs, but they haven't really competed for even the top tier of the ACC. You could say some of that, years ago had to do with sanctions, and then, Hopkins, leaving, and then the uncertainty over what Boeheim was going to, all kinds of these factors. But, the team had been struggling for a few years, even before Autry came in. And again, this year's been bad, but last year was solid, even though they missed the tournament. But it'd be nice if they could get, I said this to Manchild and Boyd Green on Wednesday, if they could get a couple of wins here at the end of the regular season. They have some winnable games, and maybe, win a couple of games, assuming they get into the ACC tournament, if they could at least win a game or two, just to end the season on they're going to likely finish under 500 overall. They already clinched under 500 for the regular season, but if they could have some positivity, kind of heading in the off season, I think that would be nice just from an emotional standpoint. But clearly there's I see some people on social media say, oh, the majority of the fan base wants Autry gone. And how do we really know that? We surveyed everything. Yeah. That's just more emotion and what you see on social media, chat forums, but there's definitely frustration. And Mark, I'll just say this, it's one thing to be disappointed, frustrated, angry, but apathy is really what is concerning. Because,
I agree.
More and more people stop going to the games, stop watching the games. Syracuse athletics, as you know, and I'm sure have been all over the lot. They just announced this new fundraising campaign, and you got revenue share coming up. So if they're and Syracuse obviously is trending upward in football and has great other programs like lacrosse, et cetera. But they have a national brand of basketball, but it's just not a relevant brand right now. So you really want to get that back on track. And I don't know. What do you think? You think it's do you think Autry should be gone after the season?
Neil, I've always been a proponent of giving college coaches time. I've always said you need to give a college coach 4 years. I don't think that's the case anymore with the current landscape of college basketball. Right. I always said it was you got to give them a full recruiting cycle, and then we'll see where they end up. But I don't know if that's the case anymore. And the more and more I watch this team, and the more and more I hear Red's post-game comments, the more and more I lean to he's not the right fit. And now
that's entirely fair. And again, I like him. He was a star player, right before I got to Syracuse, so I have a fondness for him on a personal level.
He's a legend.
I feel like with some of these, I just question, is he a really good recruiter and a really good associate head coach, but he's just not a good, being a lead guy.
That's what I think. That's what I think it is.
And if that's the case, it's not like I'm sitting here trashing him, because he's obviously a really good recruiter, and maybe he's not the guy. I don't know, but I feel like even if they lost their last 4 games, I feel like he's coming back one way or the other. I don't think they're going to fire him.
Yeah, probably. I don't think he's going to be gone. I'm just not positive about the fit of him as head coach for this team. I do want, you said earlier you're not going to play armchair coach. I'm going to ask you to play armchair coach for a second. Okay. Because something that Josh and I have talked about on this show many times, and I know Donnie hasn't been healthy for a long time now.
Sure.
But is the usage of Donnie Freeman when he was healthy and Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore starts games and plays 11 minutes. Donnie Freeman wasn't playing more than 26 minutes a game, despite the fact he was leading the team in scoring and rebounding. I don't get it. I'm not a college basketball coach either, Jim. But I've watched a lot of college basketball, and I've watched a lot of professional basketball. And usually, the most talented players on the team tend to play the most minutes.
Yeah.
And I know Chapa hasn't been what we thought he was going to be, necessarily shooting the ball. He's had some highs, he's had some lows. He's a freshman. That'll happen.
Sure.
I just don't understand it. Is there any justification that you've heard for the reason Red sets his lineups that way? Because we were all sitting here. Chop had a couple of games where he did really well coming off the bench. And I was sitting here along with many other personalities pounding my fist on the desk saying, start Choppa more. And he said, okay, you want Choppa to start? I'll start him and I'll play him 10 minutes.
Yeah.
What's the point? What are we doing?
Yeah, I agree, and so I'll play armchair quarterback, or and you can tell me how silly I am. But I would say that, especially at the beginning of the season, Carlos obviously came in, and I thought he was going to be a great fit. When he the news came out last spring that he was going to transfer, I talked to some guys that follow New York City high school basketball, and they were raving about him from, back in the day, obviously. but he scored like 90-plus points in 2 games in high school, which is, again, high school. But anyway, so, he looked to be a guy that would come in, would be steady, pass first, can score, but, just, a steady presence at the point guard spot. And he obviously, and he even acknowledged it, it was no secret, he struggled. And so, and then some fans would say, okay, well, why is he playing at all? And I don't know. I wouldn't take it that far. I would say maybe I was kind of like you, Mark. I was like, all right, well, Carlos is struggling some, and it's early on, and Red's still trying to figure out rotation. So yeah, you want to start Chapa. You want to start Kyle. I mean, for me, ultimately, it's not as much about who starts; it's about who's playing in crunch time. But in terms of Elijah, I didn't think he was necessarily going to get a ton of run this year. I mean, he came in as a top 60 national prospect, top 10 shooting guard, known as a long-range shooter, but was evolving his all-around game. But they had so many guys in the backcourt. I mean, we didn't know what was going to happen with Chance Westry, but you got Kyle Cuff, you got Carlos, you got Starling. Lucas Taylor, can play, one of the guard positions, the 2 guard or on the wing as a small forward. So, I thought it was kind of a crowded backcourt, so I didn't know how much. But Elijah had at least a handful of games early on. I can't remember the one. Didn't he score 25 points in one game?
I believe it was against Tennessee.
I'm having a senior. I mean, I'm almost 50, so you never want to trust my memory, but he did. And people got on the let's start Elijah or even Kyle Koff and let's not play Carlos as much. And I mean that's understandable. Although Carlos has had a couple of solid games more recently. But to your original question, Mark, to start a guy, especially a freshman who's adjusting a college game, to start him, give him the quick hook, and then not really play him at all. I don't. Then just don't start him. Like
exactly.
Have him come in off the bench, play his 10 to 15 minutes. Maybe he feels less pressure coming off the bench. Maybe that's the same with Chris Bell. It's like you're not worried about starting and, if you take a bad shot or you miss a rebound, like you're going to get the quick hook. No, you come in like off the bench and provide a spark. Bell has certainly done that. He's up to 30. I'm looking at my stats, 36% from 3, and he was well below 30 for a lot of the season. So anyway, I don't understand the Chapa thing. I don't pretend to know anything behind the scenes. I know he loves Syracuse, and by all accounts, I've heard over the periods of time, I don't think there's necessarily any kind of issues behind the scenes, but maybe there is. I mean, people are starting to speculate that, if Donnie doesn't go pro, and I don't necessarily think he will, even if he's projected in some draft boards, I think he could use another. But people are saying, okay, well, if Donnie comes back to college, he's definitely transferring, and Elijah's definitely transferring. And
that's what I think.
Man.
Personally, if I'm Donnie Freeman or Elijah Moore, I have no reason to come back.
Right.
Listen, I know I love Kyan Anthony and Sadiq White as a recruiting class next year. We could have a really good young team next year, potentially if they come back.
Incoming freshmen.
But exactly, they're incoming freshmen. That's not going to seduce these guys to come back to Syracuse. Donnie Freeman, 5-star recruit, could go, if he's healthy, could go to a system that better fits him. And same with Elijah Moore. And I personally don't see a world where they would come back.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, I mean, anything's possible, but looking at it from my perspective, why would I? If I'm one of them, why would I come back to Syracuse, a team that just finished well below 500, a team that, like you said, doesn't draw fans anymore?
Right.
It's not the Dome when Syracuse is good. Is for my money the best home field advantage in college basketball.
Awesome. It's awesome. Yeah.
When Syracuse isn't good and the fan base is the way they are right now, it's daunting because you're playing in front of a ton of empty seats.
Right. I was going to say it feels, just like, I don't know. It's like you hear like a pin drop in there, but it's like so big. And you know what it is for me, Mark? It makes me sad.
It makes me very sad.
It makes me sad.
Josh and I have gone to multiple games this year. We went to the Duke game and the Georgetown game together.
Yeah.
Right.
2 games that should be 30,000 people screaming in the Dome. Yeah. And, Josh is a Hoyas fan, but we forgive him for that.
I'm an SU alum. I'm with you.
He is an SU alum. So he roots for Syracuse every game out of the year except one.
That's right.
So we'll give him that. But So we go to the Hoyas game. He's wearing Georgetown gear. His dad's wearing Georgetown gear, and no one's talking trash to him except one guy.
I know
It's like
not the same.
it's not the same, and it sucks. It really sucks. I've been to like 7 games this year, and one of them has been kind of exciting. It's it's brutal.
Yeah, it's I put something on my X page like about that. I was thinking back. So I was responding to someone else, and again, I'm having a senior moment and don't remember. But I was thinking back to like what I would consider the last like golden era of Syracuse hoops from like 2009 to 2014, that first year in the ACC.
Yep.
And the reason I'm thinking of that now is you just mentioned Duke. Like, I've obviously been to a ton of Syracuse games over the year. Certainly at the Dome, but ACC tournament games. I was at the Final Four in 2013 in Atlanta. But probably the 2 most exciting games I've ever been to in person. One was when they beat Marquette in the Elite Eight in 2013 to get to the Final Four, and I was screaming like a little kid the entire time. But then the other one was when Syracuse, that first year there in the ACC, they beat Duke 91-89 in overtime. At the Dome, and they set the attendance record, which I think they've set since then. But that's to your point, Mark, is that like you couldn't hear yourself in there, and it was just crazy, and it was just it's just not like that now. I mean, it stinks. It stinks. So, but to get back to Donnie and Elijah, I mean, I certainly can see where you're coming from with that. It's it's like I don't know what like Coach Autry is saying to these guys behind the scenes. One thing I did write about not too long ago, where I said that I thought if Donnie was coming back to college, I thought maybe coming back to Syracuse could happen because he is so close with the coaches, including Brendan Strawn. Like the guys that transferred out last year, while they were recruited by the assistants, they were Boeheim recruits. They were all part of that 2022 class. So, I mean, it's not, no pun intended here. It wasn't completely an apples to orange thing with that, in terms of those guys last offseason versus this offseason. But to your point, I mean, Donnie was having a pretty good year, and I'm still seeing him on mock, boards, even though he only played 14 games. But, a lot of that stuff is based on projected impact. It's not necessarily. Yeah. So, I mean, I could see him going, and, he was playing a decent amount. He wasn't always playing during crunch time, but Elijah, again, just not to harp on it, that whole situation where he's been starting games and then getting the quick hook and not is like the most out of all the decisions and like, lineups and rotation has been befuddling to me. I one other thing that I felt I was glad to see Naheem get some time recently. I never thought he was going to be like the, Shaquille O'Neal when he was at LSU. But I mean, a 7'4" guy, and obviously coming off injury last year, but get him some spot minutes here and there, especially if Eddie's, fatigued or in foul trouble, whatever. And Eddie's had some good games, but I mean, he's got some limitations too. Yep. But just to see this guy get in, Naheem get in there a little bit, but they just haven't been able to put it. And you mentioned the press conference. Is it me, or do I feel like? And again, I love Coach Red and the staff on a personal level. I'm an alum, all that jazz. Does it seem like he never this year? He's not taking a ton of accountability, like when we lose games.
None.
And I know the players are the ones on the court doing the playing. So I defend Red in a lot of instances when I'm doing game updates and people are trashing him, and I'm like, well, I mean, he's not out there, but I mean, it is coaching too. Yeah. And so, like, I don't know. He just like talked about how he's disappointed, and we're all disappointed. But like, I don't know. Has he said a lot, like, impressed, like, hey, this is on me too? Like, I don't know. Maybe if he has, then I'll eat crow. Like,
that Miami team's really good, Neil. Okay.
Hey, man.
That blew my mind.
Yeah, I will say that Miami, like, I mean, certainly a big part of it was obviously Larinaga hanging up, his whistle. Yeah. And I love that guy, and I'm from the DMV, so obviously I knew him from Mason and back in the day. But yeah, I mean, that was the disaster.
Come on,
I mean, it's
Miami. They've won one conference game.
I know.
That's a tough
and they gave up
bite.
how many points? 90, 91?
Yeah.
I mean, That's absurd.
But they're better than their record, Neil. That's all we need to know is that Miami, the worst team maybe in the Power 5,
they're up there.
is better than their record. Neil, I hate to cut you off, but we're running a little low on time here.
It's all good.
Pleasure talking to you as always, my friend. We'll have to have you on the show again soon before the official end of the basketball season to talk even more. Always a pleasure. Have a good weekend. All right, pal.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate you guys. Yeah, let's definitely chat some pop culture soon.
All right. Yeah, we will. We will. All right. There he is, Neil Adler, editor over at Inside the Loud House. We got to take a break. We'll come back, wrap things up here on Outside the Box Score. Your home for local sports in Syracuse on the Score 1260. If you're a fan of local craft beer, the only place you need to go is Myers Creek Brewing Company with 16 brews on tap at both the Cazenovia and Inner Harbor locations. Myers Creek has the best selection of locally brewed libations in all of central New York. Want a nice hazy IPA? The Velvet Fog is a must-try. More of a traditional Pilsner, how about the Floatin' on By? And for you sour drinkers, the It Takes Blue to Mango. So crack open a cold one with the official beer of Outside the Box Score, Myers Creek.
Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required
Thursday.
to purchase.
Yeah.
And basically him
Hey,
saying
man,
we're
how you
committing
doing?
to using
Everything
the
around?
full
Mm-hmm.
NIL funds that we can next year. And I was going to be like, well, what does that mean for Syracuse? Is that how much of that is going to basketball nowadays?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
That's a
'Cause-
big thing because, the football program's good now. We kind of
Right.
need a lot of money for that.
The fans obviously will hop ship from basketball in a heartbeat. If football's winning
Yep.
and competitive, couldn't care less
Yep.
in their minds,
Mhm.
surely. But as a university, as a basketball staple in the
Mhm.
NCAA, you're not quitting on your basketball program. You're not just not committing funds. If you get, it was like
Yeah.
$22.5 million or $25 million
Well, the program they launched is 50.
to raise it, but I think
Yeah.
you can only use 25
Oh, I
next
don't
year.
know.
It's a percentage
Yeah.
based on Power 5 revenue.
Yeah.
That's what he was kind of talking about,
Mhm.
I think, the revenue
Yeah,
sharing.
the revenue sharing.
But let's say it's like 25 or even the 50, whatever it
Mhm.
is. If it's $25 million, do they get 5 million? Does the basketball program get 5, 10? How much do they get?
Yeah, because
Because the lower sports have to take some of that. Like you say, lacrosse.
Lacrosse has got to get some, men's and women's.
Yeah.
The field hockey will get some, just because they are a pretty good program.
That's why this whole thing is garbage. I mean, it's never been equitable, right?
Mhm.
In terms of, I mean, before NIL, people were getting paid to play in certain spaces. In Arizona, Rick Pitino is a great guy to do that.
Yep.
Anywhere and everywhere, they were paying people.
Yeah.
And even now, though, you talk about making it equitable. It's like, well, what about women's sports?
Yeah.
Caitlin Clark was pulling in, probably the most as a women's athlete by
Mhm.
far, or Livy Dunn, whatever, probably.
I
But
think Livy Dunn had the highest NIL.
was that with
valuation.
sponsorships and stuff, though?
Yeah,
probably?
it's like a
not-
valuation,
Yeah, so it's not like from their organization.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how that works, and it's never going to be equal.
No.
It's
.org.
And we're back outside the box score with me, Mark Rowlands, your home for local sports in Syracuse, right here on the Score 1260. Wrapping up a very fun hour. Shout out Neil Adler, editor at Inside the Loud House, for joining us. Talk a little SU hoops. We do have to get into like a pop culture conversation with him. Big Duran Duran guy.
really
Yeah, loves them.
okay.
Favorite band. He talks.
Favorite band?
Yeah, he talks about Duran Duran on
Wow.
Manchild show like almost every week now. It's very fun. It's a very fun bit that he does.
This day in history, actually, Duran playing like stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Big Duran Duran guy.
Okay.
But always pleasure talking to him. He sort of asked me, and I want to. Do you think Red should be back next year?
We've talked about it. I think yes.
Yeah.
I think you just give him one more year.
Mhm.
He has Carmelo's kid, and now next year the university is at a standpoint where like there should be no more excuses. Like
No.
like he said, like the program really wasn't that great anyways that he inherited. Like
No,
like you said,
but
only one losing season.
They had moments.
yes,
They went to the Sweet 16. They went to the Final Four. Like it was like
that Final Four run really screwed him because if that doesn't happen, you're like this team's been bad for years.
20. But yeah, they had 2016. They had what was that, like 2019 when they went to the Sweet 16 or something.
Yeah.
They had that one run when we were in college. It might have been after that.
Yeah, I mean it's still been good, but like you said, only one losing season. They've been like they haven't been bad. You know what I mean? Like that's the weird thing in
Yeah.
college. If you don't make the tournament, you almost feel like that's a loss.
Yeah.
Especially at Syracuse, like
Yeah,
that's a loss.
absolutely.
So like the team wasn't making tournaments. It is what it is. But next year with Carmelo's kid, Sadiq White, no excuses.
Yeah. So that's going to wrap up the show. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thanks to everyone that was in chat. Thank you to Neil Adler. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, 11 a.m. right here on the Score 1260. Go Lakers, in peace.